Snipping through a shot of nostalgia. Yeah, what's up, brothers?
Mike fucking Belcaster back in the building with an exclamation point. What is up, my man?
What is up, my man? How's it going? Happy to be back. Jacked, stacked, ready to get maxed, brother. Yeah.
Man, it seems like you made some stops on that road trip that you were cross country with, picking up some Slim Jims. Hell yeah. You look amazing right now.
Got the Savage brand. You can't get off brand for shot of nostalgia, man.
You guys don't even know the quality you're getting here right now. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I'm pumped, man. Well, welcome to the 11th episode of Shot of Nostalgia, brothers. We're going deep into it today. It's going to be a really good one. We're covering, is it Slamboree? Am I right? Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Right. It's not Slammiversary. It's not. And we got the Nitro from afterwards. So this is going to be fucking excellent, dude. I'm so excited to be back with you, brother.
Dude, I missed you, man. This has been a while. I was on here solo. I was out there on a raft by myself, floating through the river of nostalgia. But, you know, we had to stay the course because we have, at this point, a very strict schedule to get through if we want to be able to hit the landmark dates. And I had mentioned it on the show before. July 28th will be our biggest episode yet, where we will be talking about Bash of the Beast 1996 with the formation of the New World Order. Hulk Hogan gets all the trash thrown at him in the ring. And we have some special guests going to be joining us right now. We have confirmed Matt from Extra Cooler will be joining us for that show. Who knows who else will show up, but the more the merrier. We want everybody who lived it, who experienced it, and who wants to talk about it. You don't know who from the Tavern is going to be there, from the Pod Foundation. I'm excited for it. It's in a few weeks from now.
Mega Powers reunited.
But the WWF version, not this WCW
version
of the Mega Power. We are the WWF Mega Powers.
You just keep putting yourself over like Hogan does. We'll be good.
Exactly, yes. So as Mike Macho Man Belcaster mentioned, we are doing our 11th episode, and I appreciate you guys being patient with me last week because it was me solo. So thank you for the positive feedback. Thank you for coming along the journey. But this is our biggest episode that we've had thus far, and this is the changing of the guard. This is what we had mentioned weeks and weeks. This is the last pay-per-view before Scott Hall and Kevin Nash show up. So get ready, strap in. This is what we've been doing 1996 for. This is what we've been kind of just driving through some of the garbage, if we're being honest, from the beginning of 1996. It's going to get better, and I'm so super pumped for this. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be reviewing WCW Slamboree and the May 20th episode of WCW Nitro. And as I mentioned before, each week we will be reviewing 2 episodes, whether it be Clash of Champions, pay-per-view, Nitros. You'll get 2 shots of nostalgia talking about, and sometimes there will be a huge double shot when it's a pay-per-view. We have a lot to talk about here, so we're going to get into it very quickly. Belcaster and I have just watched these events, so they are fresh in our brain, and we are ready to talk about them. So just so you guys know, next Friday, we will be reviewing the May 27th Nitro and the June 3rd Nitro. So we're almost approaching where we are in the timeline, which is all that many years ago. And we're going to go right through the newsletter with our happy hour. Let's sip our drinks and get ready. All right, here we are in happy hour. Let's wet our whistles a little bit. Let me take a little sip.
Stacked, jacked, ready to roll. Let's go.
I'm going to go through the newsletter from Wrestling Observer for the news in May all across WCW. So we have one newsletter to go through this week, and it's a doozy, really. May 20th, 1996, the newsletter dropped on WrestlingObserver.com. Dave Meltzer on his little typewriter, typing away in that room filled with paper, has a lot to talk about. And the first thing on the docket is World Championship Wrestling announced that on May 8th, that it would be expanding its Monday Nitro show to 2 hours from 8 p.m. Eastern Time, effective May 27th. So the next week, we're going to be having a little bit more extended conversation about the matches. This changed the face of wrestling because we look at wrestling shows as 2 hours as a minimum at this point. Right now, Rampage is an hour. Dynamite following the Nitro format from the 2 hours, but this is a big expansion for them. Mike Belcaster, do you remember when they moved over to 2 hours and what you felt like it? How effective it was?
The strange thing is recollecting my thoughts on this. I always thought it was 2 hours. It was, it was just one of those things. It felt like it forever. But like rewatching, going through all this, I do remember when it changed. I was happy. I was getting another hour of wrestling. Who wasn't happy? I was a little kid. I was like, hell yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, this expansion of the show, as Meltzer mentions in here, has been somewhat in discussion for quite some time. It wasn't expected to take place until early September, so this is expedited. And the decision to do so immediately has a lot to do with TNT's commitments to the NBA playoffs being over, and they needed to fill spots. So TNT, Ted Turner was like, you know what? Let's ride the other cash cow of the Turner Industries, and let's go with the wrestling for another hour. And I think it was a very, very good thing. And in the newsletter, Dave is talking a little bit about the hesitation of the wrestling world at large of, can we handle another hour of program? It's funny to even think about now where we have Raw 3 hours and we're sitting through 5 hours of wrestling pay-per-views.
Yeah, no, it's insane, man. This was a good move for WCW, though. They needed the extra hour of content, I think, and especially with what's coming up. I was happy they expedited everything and made it before September, because I mean, you're getting so much story happening very soon that it's just you need that hour, or else you're not going to be able to sell it.
So Meltzer mentions whether this is good for the industry as a whole for the long term, and we still don't even know the long-term effect of Nitro itself, is something that is another story. Most of the speculation is negative, but this is uncharted waters, and while we can point to the history for some answers, the world changes daily, and the history of what happened to pro wrestling in the 50s doesn't necessarily correlate to what will happen in the late 90s. In this industry, almost nobody has ever made decisions based on long-term, and this isn't the time anyone is going to start now, especially with WCW, with long-term consists of every Tuesday afternoon when the previous night's ratings come in. So ratings are a really big thing here. It's funny that it's a big conversation because at this point, the roster is big enough to handle this. We talk about it all the time. They they eventually moved to 3 hours as well, which probably is too much. This is the sweet spot. 2 hours is for me, nostalgia-wise, I love my wrestling with 2 hours of action-packed.
Minty. It's perfect. I think the 3 hours eventually it hurts the product no matter what, but I think that's really hurt WCW. I mean, especially in the later years, they had 3 hours. It was almost like they were trying to fill it as opposed to fitting things in. You know what I mean? And then it's not a bad thing if you're making a cake and you're trying to put extra things in it, but if you're trying to drag out those ingredients, you're getting a really dry product. So you don't want to screw around with that. So 2 hours is definitely the sweet spot.
You got to leave people wanting more. You don't want them to feel a little bit inundated with your characters and your programming, especially now. I think about worst case scenario is where Raw is now with the 3 hours. It's too much. I can't remember the last time I sat down for appointment TV to watch Raw 3 hours at a clip. Yes, I'll check it out on Hulu. Yes, I'll check out YouTube clips. Yes, I'll check out certain segments I want to. But back here, people were sitting down. They grabbed a drink. They grabbed whatever they want to eat. They would run to the fridge during commercials, and that was it. You were sitting down for those 2 hours from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, or in your case, on the Central Time. Yeah. You were locked in, and I can't say that you were locked in on Raw, this week. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Could not agree more. The sweet spot, man. 2 hours is perfect.
All right, so going forward, we will be reviewing 2 hours of Nitro, but it will be nice and compact because the commercials aren't in them. So next on the newsletter, the plans for WCW Great American Bash, which is our next pay-per-view on June 16th in Baltimore. And Meltzer says this is majorly subject to change, is the Giant versus Lex Luger for the WCW title, Conan versus Sting for the U.S. title, Ric Flair and Arn Anderson versus Kevin Green and Steve McMichael, Dean Malenko defending his Cruiserweight Championship against Rey Mysterio Jr., DDP versus the Great Muta, Booty Man versus Hugh Morris, and Kevin Sullivan versus Chris Benoit. Randy Savage is expected to be in the corner of the football players for the match. So just noting that here because I want to put it out there to see if the Great American Bash card matches up. I didn't go forward and check it out yet. Any of those match strike interest you? I mean, you're rocking the American flag for Great American Bash.
Hell yeah.
How are you feeling about that card?
4th of July weekend, so I had to step it up, but I also got to get the Macho Man gear out when I'm back in full force. But this was a solid ass card. So if this is what we're leading into, because I don't remember, but I mean, I'm super Sting versus Conan. Come on,
yeah,
I want to see that. That's gonna be fucking awesome.
If anyone wants to tag Conan in this, and I know clipping this and put it on Reels on Instagram has worked. I got Dax Harwood to check out the AEW wrap-up show, which was awesome. If we can get Conan to check this out, we want you on here. I want to hear you talk about everything going on in 1996 because you made a fan out of me. I was not aware of the great work he was doing because full transparency, I was watching WWF in 1996. So Conan was just an outlier for me.
Yeah.
And I continue to say it every week. He's one of those guys I'm so impressed with that I'm a huge fan. I need all the merch. I need the figures. I need all of it.
No, absolutely. Listen, I'll put Conan over all day long. I think he's one of the most underrated wrestlers in WCW at this era. I mean, he was doing fucking great matches, excellent work quality, great. Just he was carrying his own division basically. And what do they call him? The Mexico champion. Because they could call him the AAA, but he's the Mexico champion, man, and he was killing it. I loved Conan. Drew me into that kind of pace of wrestling and that style, and I really fell in love with his character and his in-ring work, man. I think he's just excellent.
Trailblazer, that's what he is. I mean, he carried over and normalized the lucha libre style for the American audience, and people don't give him the credit he deserves. And I'll say it all day. He is a huge star that helped guys like Eddie Guerrero, guys like Rey Mysterio, guys that maybe wouldn't have had a chance to be main eventers here in the United States for these bigger promotions, WWE and WCW alike. He helped bridge that gap because people believed it could work. And Conan's contributions to the business continue today. His mind for the business, his booking, all of that. Lucha Underground was amazing. He's still, he's still out there doing his thing. So kudos to Conan. If you want to come on the show, you're always welcome. We love you, brother.
Love
all right. The debuts in the ring of Kevin Nash and Scott Hall with their new gimmicks should be on the following July 6th pay-per-view out of Daytona Beach. We do know, I don't know if it's the first time they worked, but we do see both of them way before that July 6th. So just a note here, Meltzer's only giving us the information that he at his fingertips. Sting, Ric Flair, The Giant, and Randy Savage from WCW will be coming to Japan in either July or August, and the Road Warriors return in late June. Just putting it out there, we just had Forbidden Door pass at AEW. The relationship between WCW and New Japan has been noted throughout this whole show. We've been talking about potentially that Peace Festival, but also talent going over to Japan to hone their craft. The Giant, Randy Savage. I was unaware about some of these guys going there, but I kind of have to go and find it now.
Yeah.
This one.
No, absolutely. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, definitely something to look at. And the relationship with WCW and New Japan, it plays a part in today in the success of the Forbidden Door, because I think a lot of what Tony Khan models himself after is the WCW, the good part of WCW. We talk about Nitro, but also WCW and New Japan worked cohesively together for a very long time, and big matches were had. Their champions were going over. I mean, obviously the Giant's heading over there. He's WCW champion. So it's not like they're sending Lance Archer to work the G1. This is a big deal. You're sending your main stars, and like that is a huge I would say sign of respect that you are respecting a relationship by sending your biggest stars. And I fully expect eventually we're going to see some of the biggest stars from AEW heading over to Japan in some capacity.
Absolutely, man. It can't be a one-way road. It's got to be a two-way road. You got to both guys got to hit that destination. So, in my opinion, I think Forbidden Door was amazingly successful, even with all the setbacks. So, I would love to see the AEW crew make their way out to a Wrestle Kingdom or a G1 tournament. Give me some fun, man.
I'm here for all that stuff. I love the open door policy, Forbidden Door, or whatever you want to call it. The fact that you have talent working cohesively together, it helps everybody. It helps people become, I guess, able to work different styles, especially a guy like the Giant. He's 20-something years old. The fact that he's able to get more seasoned in the ring, not just with WCW talent, but with guys from New Japan who can help him work a different style, sell better, relate to a different audience. It makes him a better worker. And I think that can't be dismissed. I think even with AEW, the guys that will eventually work in Japan, it's a completely different ball game. And it works the same way for the New Japan stars as well. Guys that have never worked here, it's a huge step up for them as well, because it's just a different audience and it's a different approach in the ring.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it was like it might have been on the media scrum with Okada, but Okada was talking about how he wishes the Japanese crowds were more like the American crowds, how awesome it felt to do something so big in front of a huge audience that was rowdy and rambunctious, instead of getting just the normal clap and applause from the normal New Japan crowd. So it's got to be beneficial against everybody, or for everybody. It's awesome, man.
Yeah, not to go too far off on a tangent, but the fact that you said the crowds being different, it rings very, very true, especially with a guy like Will Ospreay.
Yeah.
And if you read some reviews, and I'm a guy who goes on Cage Match all the time to look at match reviews and also reviews of guys' careers and what people say about different wrestlers. And Will Ospreay's page is either someone saying he's the perfect pro wrestler, that he is a guy that you could build a company around. And there is the detractors, very few and far between, but there are detractors that do say he's excessively emotive with his face. He's doing things in the ring that are exaggerated. And my note to them would be he's doing it because there's a language barrier and he needs to convey a message without having the words to do so. So of course he's going to be eccentric. Of course he's going to have an exaggerated approach. And that is also, if you watch New Japan Pro Wrestling, a lot of the selling, a lot of the build for these events, similar to what we got for Forbidden Door, it's action based. It's guys just going and attacking each other. It's just shooting angles in that way. It's not going to be two guys, one standing at the top of the ramp and another in the ring talking to each other. Zack Sabre Jr. appeared on Dynamite. He didn't talk. And that is a New Japan approach. And people just need to kind of get used to that. It's just a different way of doing things.
No, absolutely. You get a lot of
exactly.
A lot of facials, a lot of movements, it's all body language. And you have to do that if you're going to perform for a completely different culture.
Yeah.
100%.
All right, so there are several more changes in the Peace Festival show that is slated for June 1st at the Los Angeles Sports Arena from what was in last week's Observer. Terry Funk officially pulled out of the show on May 8th because he felt a finish couldn't have been worked out in the triangular match in the way it was proposed. Funk originally wanted to be part of the show as an American farewell, which is so funny to hear that in 1996, a farewell tour for Terry Funk, in a triple threat match with Sabu and Brian Pillman, who he pretty much picked himself as opponents, and he had the idea of ending the match with him endorsing those two as the future superstars of American wrestling. First, note on this, the term triangular match, was the word triple threat non-existent in the 90s, or am I just missing something here?
No, I think I'm pretty sure it was, but I mean, maybe there's a different stipulation to a triangular match than there is a triple threat.
Possibly. Maybe you got to pin both guys instead, like an elimination match. I don't know. We have to look that up. Maybe if you guys know. I just read it. Maybe it's Meltzer just being cheeky and he's just using different words to be. What's a synonym for triple threat?
Triangular.
Triangular. Isosceles match.
Geometrics, man.
So yeah, the Peace Festival that was expected to be this giant game-changing show, it's falling apart at the seams. We're going to get a very solid card. If you look at it, it's worth watching. It's worth checking out. But it certainly is not changing the landscape of wrestling because, Antonio Inoki's original vision was to bridge that gap between all these companies and create a roadmap for everyone working cohesively. And obviously it works with WCW New Japan this way, but you couldn't get WWF involved. And the relationship the preconceived relationship that ECW had with WWF, that was also an issue as well. So you're not getting the dream matches intended. Similar to Forbidden Door, there's a lot of parallels between both events. I would say Forbidden Door delivered despite these struggles, but I would say this event doesn't really hold up. The Peace Festival, that is.
Yeah.
All right. So Nitro on May 13th from Nashville drew 5,700 people, 2942 paying 38,620. And just to note, the crowd was dead, according to Meltzer. Part of that was because the signs were being violently confiscated, and there appeared to be a tremendous paranoia among security during the event, which affected the crowd. So this will come up in a second, too. There's another note about this, but we have some paranoia within the security of potential signs that are coming in that are pro WWF. Man, we see some of that with WWE, where they tell people to take the shirts off. I remember there was a guy in the front row wearing a Bullet Club shirt and they had him take it off. I mean, that may be the story being discombobulated a little bit, but there is that paranoia, and that just shows how deeply rooted this rivalry is going between not only the fans and the company, but the two companies against each other. It's petty as hell.
Yeah, no, I've had it happen to. I took my nephew to his first Raw. We were probably. It was one of the ones where you could take the chairs home. I think we were like 6th row or something like that. And the camera guy came by and he had a little Young Buck shirt on, and the camera guy just looked at him and was like, "Nope, man, not happening." And I was like, "Come on!" I was like, "What the hell? Are you going to do that and ruin the kid's first Raw appearance?" He was excited as hell to be there, but it took the wind out of him. It made him not want to cheer as much, not want to enjoy the show as much, and it's just over a t-shirt. Like, you don't need to be so petty, man. What are you doing?
There's an insecurity that, like, if you're putting on the best product in the ring and on people's TVs, you don't have to worry about being insecure because people are going to watch your product because it's the best. That just shows me that you don't feel like you're giving the fans the best product, and you don't want people to say, like, who's that on that guy's shirt in the front row? If they're looking at a kid in the front row with the shirt, you're doing something wrong.
Absolutely,
man.
Man.
You're doing something wrong. So the other sign that was taken away at the taping the previous week in Daytona Beach, Jackie Crockett violently ripped a Hogan's Click sign out of a fan's hand. They were afraid that WCW fans can't spell. That's what Meltzer said, because Click was spelled K-L-I-K. This was done by Jackie Crockett. So Jim Crockett's, I think, daughter was like scanning the crowd and taking things away from fans. So
wild.
Weird note. Like, it probably, if you're reading it at that time, it makes sense because maybe it's something that was been going on. But when it popped out to me in the newsletter as something very, very bizarre.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've seen it before. I've had a sign when I went to Raw when I was a kid taken away because I think I went to SummerSlam 2002 actually, and I brought a sign that said Dick Flair instead of Ric Flair. He was a heel wrestling Jericho. I was a huge Jericho fan, and it wrote Dick Flair, and they took it away at the door. So I kind of commend that. I understand that.
Yeah,
they're moving away from the Attitude Era, but if it's just all in good fun, signs are a fun thing, but shirts too. Like, making someone turn their shirt inside out is a ridiculous thing. And again, it's insecurity because you're insecure about the product, and make your show better. Like, I don't understand any other reason than that.
No, absolutely.
All right. So next here we have the Blood Runs Cold vignettes. We had Meltzer mentioned that it had to do with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall last week, which we know is categorically just false. He admits he's wrong here in the newsletter, but he gets it wrong again. He says it will be a team of 3 ninja heroes being brought in, and one of them is expected to be Brian Clark, the formerly known as Adam Bomb. We know it winds up being our good friend Glacier, but Meltzer is completely wrong here. 3 ninja heroes, Blood Runs Cold. Like, it's quite obvious. It was never going to be Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, but maybe that's just because I'm able to look at it with, 2022 hindsight.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. It's very crazy. And even funnier that he said 3 ninja heroes, because Hogan was in 3 Ninjas Magic Mountain Man.
That's true.
No Rocky and Tum Tum going on here.
Yes, that's a great movie, by the way.
Great movie.
Nostalgia. Great movie.
Series, man. Yeah, we'll go deep with nostalgia with that one.
Yeah, I think that's our next series of we're just gonna do those movies.
I love it.
All right, so next in the newsletter, we have the Giant billed as Paul the Giant White has been filming a movie in Portland, Oregon called Reggie's Prayer, starring Reggie White of the Green Bay Packers, Malcolm Jamal Warner of The Cosby Show, Pat Morita of Karate Kid, and Rosie Greer, an NFL star from the 60s. Paul White is the star, playing a guy who quits the NFL to coach at-risk teens. White plays a villain who takes one of White's players hostage. A few notes about the Giant. He played basketball at Southern Illinois. He goes through everything he's done, makes him an athlete that's credible. We know that Big Show does do some acting. I think he had like a Netflix show that was like a fake reality show. He's been in some other things as well. Obviously, Adam Sandler, like he was the guy in The Waterboy, Captain Insano.
Hell yeah.
So before, I didn't even know he made his debut to the movies, if you would even call it that, in this movie called Reggie's Prayer. I have no idea about it. I'm going to check out maybe a trailer. But Reggie White of the Green Bay Packers and the Giant, definitely a cool tandem.
It's a great, an Oscar award nominee crew there. I didn't even know this was a movie. I remember Paul White was in Jingle All the Way. He was Captain Insano. Yeah, but I don't remember him being in too much other shit. He had the Big Show on Netflix, like you were talking about,
the fake reality show that they like had a fake family with them, which was, I never understood that. Like, what are we doing?
It was a shitcom, not a sitcom.
Yeah, exactly. Also here in the newsletter, Meltzer does air some concern among WCW officials that having Paul White and Kevin Nash in the ring is going to be an issue because they're billing Paul White as 7'2" and Kevin Nash as 6'10", and they're around the same height as a shoot height. So he says it's not going to be an issue because at some point Andre and Ernie Ladd wrestled and they always look like the same height. and they bill Lat at 6'9" and Andre at 7'5", which is a huge discrepancy. So that is an interesting thing. Like if you look at Nash and Paul White in the ring, and if you're listening to the Extra Cooler show that did the Bash at the Beach 97, shout out to them. Great show.
Oh, yeah.
They were talking about Dennis Rodman being in the ring against the Giant. And now Rodman looked like he was the same size, and it took away from the Giant's appeal. Like you picked the worst opponent to have against him. And I know Rodman is a basketball player and he is innately a tall guy, you know, known for his rebounding and blocking. But I don't know. Do you want one of your world champion or former world champions against a guy who's not a wrestler and looking just the same size? It takes away the appeal a little bit.
Absolutely. You gotta get some
some lifts on your boots, right?
Yeah. Something, man. Don't destroy the magic.
Yeah, I mean, Paul White in WCW for some reason he looks smaller in their ring. I'm not sure why. Maybe because the guys were tall. I don't know.
It was bigger talent back then.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
that's absolutely what it is. I mean, I forgot what it was. But anybody that talks about Billy Gunn, they're always like, "Man, he's so big." I forgot who. I just seen a picture with him with somebody, and he was taller. It was like I'm just using Luchasaurus as a name, but it was like somebody like a Luchasaurus, and they're like, Billy Gunn's taller than the big guy. Like it's wild to see.
Yeah, it's true because Billy Gunn used to just be a guy like he felt like a normal sized guy in the ring, wrestling guys with The Rock and wrestling guys all over the Attitude Era. It is a bizarre thing to think about.
Same thing with X-Pac, man. X-Pac's a tall drink of water, but you don't look at it because he looked like the smallest guy in the roster. He's like 6'2" or something like that, 6'3". He fills out pretty good. He might be taller than that.
Yeah, when we watched him in GCW, he felt much bigger because you think of him as that tiny little lightning kid, 1, 2, 3 kid, where he's a skinny little nothing. But you put him in the ring now, he's taller than the Bucks. He's taller than Adam Cole.
Yeah,
he's
wild.
He's 5-6 inches taller than John Gresham. Like he is, for a guy, he was small at the time, but he would be one of the bigger guys now. It's a weird perspective taking.
Absolutely, man.
All right. So next year we have Hogan getting a lot of publicity the last week, doing a boxing gimmick with Shaquille O'Neal and Sugar Ray Leonard, and appearing and being interviewed at the Orlando Magic playoff game on May 10th. Hogan and Roddy Piper are doing their first movie together called The Overlords, being filmed in Canada, with the two being listed as co-stars along with Gary Busey. Remember anything about this movie?
Absolutely not, but it sounds fucking awesome.
Gary Busey, Shaquille O'Neal, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roddy Piper, all in the same little news segment here. You can't get better than that.
Where can you go? No, absolutely not.
So WCW pulled a Saturday Gene Okerlund hotline message because he said Nash and Hall were a done deal. And Meltzer conjectures that I guess the deal is that Bischoff's storyline is to make it sound like they aren't coming, to put doubt into when they do come. As we do know, they want the doubt because they are going to be billed and advertised as these outsiders. This Gene Okerlund flub doesn't have any negative effect because people are still uneasy about whether they are WCW roster guys, whether they're WWF. And we'll talk more about that as we move forward. But this hotline thing is getting Gene in trouble a little bit. He's revealing some spoilers. You get a lot of nuggets of information on there. Yeah.
I mean, if you were paying fucking $40 to sit on the phone for 5 minutes, you might as well get your money worth.
That's true.
That shit was not cheap.
All right. So next year we have WCW may set its record live gate for the June 7th Legends at the Odd Show in Buffalo. They had tapped $120,000 as an advance at press time. The all-time company record is $190,000 for the Flair Funk 1989 match at the Baltimore Bash. Much of the credit for the show's success should go to Dennis DiPaolo, the son of Io DiPaolo, who's being honored in WCW because of the success and planning on going back when they opened the new arena. So just more stuff. And these numbers popped at me a little bit because of the gates. We just talked about the gate that happened at Forbidden Door, which is, I think they made over $1 million on the money here. And I know inflation, blah, 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 and you could take the number and put them next to each other. It's just interesting where the wrestling world was in 1996. And it just hasn't blossomed to where it is. The expectations are much lower as far as what they expect from gates and also pay-per-view buys.
Yeah.
All right. So originally Savage was going to be suspended on TV in an angle, but they realized Flair Savage is the biggest drawing match they have on the road right now. So Savage is going to be suspended from TV, but allowed to work non-sanctioned matches on the house shows. So we are seeing Randy Savage being very unstable, to say the least, because of losing the world title, losing his girlfriend, ex-wife, whatever, Elizabeth. He is being very, very much billed like Brian Pillman. Like he is all over the place, being escorted by security. So house shows still meant a lot here. So they're like, you know what? Television wise, you're not seeing Randy Savage. But the crazy part is it would make people want to go to the house show. If you're not seeing Randy on TV, you would come if they're locally at a house show because Randy's going to be there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's the drawing power. And it made the house show aspect work for WCW. You had that one guy that like everybody loves, and you put him in that house show experience or that atmosphere, and that's one of the things. It's crazy, man.
All right, so the last thing here before we get to getting our fix and talking about all things WCW Slamboree, we have Mark Marrow from Eric Bischoff, a huge quote. I will not read the whole thing. I have a small segment. If you guys would like the whole quote, message me. I'll give you the whole quote, or just look it up in the newsletter from May 20th, 1996. And Bischoff completely ravages Mark Marrow. He was kind of mincing words a little bit. He was being upfront and honest about why they didn't have him come back. I think he's sick of the shit. He's coming for the throat here. So he said, we all think Johnny's a great wrestler now, but a year ago, you guys were filleting him like he was a fish. He wouldn't have had that opportunity to become a great wrestler if I hadn't given it to him. He had a contract. He shook hands. He agreed on a deal. And then because he didn't like the tone of my voice when we had an issue over the NASCAR problem, he decided to call Vince and take a better offer. That to me is not integrity. He may have his reasons for doing it, but he may believe he's right. But if I shake hands with somebody and say, this is our deal, I'll cut off my arm before I go back on my word, which is so funny that Bischoff is saying that. Johnny say he'd like to leave on good terms, but I don't think agreeing on a deal, giving me an ultimatum, and told me 5 minutes before we were getting on an airplane is necessarily the greatest way to part a company. He looked me in the eye and said, no, you're not leaving on good terms, and I sincerely hope you know what you're doing because you're not coming back. I meant it when I said it, but in reality, as much as I'm still a little disturbed by what happened, I've had time to get over it personally. We keep seeing this pop up, and Marrow hasn't been on TV in like 2 months at this point. He was a big deal with that character as Johnny B. Bad. They put the TV title on him. He had some big plans with DDP. They had more storyline going for him. And Mark Marrow thought greener pastures were ahead of him in WWF. It obviously didn't work out that way. This whole thing with Bischoff and Marrow fascinates me because even though Bischoff says he's over it, even still today, when these events come up in 1996, inevitably Conrad Thompson asks him about Mark Marrow and he says, I'm over it, but then goes on a rant about how he was burned by him. So it's just funny to me. And I will talk about it every time it's on here.
No, it's weird that they put him in. I mean, they gave him the red carpet. They put the title on him. They paved the way for him to become a big star. He just didn't have that it factor. He was missing something. Johnny B. Bad, man, because that's exactly what he was. It was terrible. I never got into it. And I don't understand how. I don't know who's seen what in him and was trying to put him over. I really don't.
It's crazy too, because I think a couple episodes ago, I think when he first left WCW, we were talking about there were some letters from fans to Dave Meltzer talking about the products and ripping on WCW and talking about how big of a star Johnny B. Bad would be once he left, and he's supposed to be this transcendent main eventer, and that they would rue the day he was gone. But alas, Bischoff was right. Every once in a while you're wrong. We look at a guy, and I've been talking about with Claudio showing up in AEW and how wrong WWE was. It's not like WWE didn't offer him the money, and now it's coming out that they offered him a large amount of money that he turned down, but they never pulled the trigger and made him feel desired or that he would be the guy.
Yeah.
It's just funny to me how things work out, and only history can reveal the truth. We don't know what's going to happen with Claudio. Just as at this point, we didn't know what happened with Marrow. Eventually, we did find out, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so it's time to get our fix. We're going to talk about everything with the Lethal Lottery. We have a lot to break down. We got through the newsletter pretty quick with 30 minutes, but we have a lot to unpack here, guys. It is time to get your fix. We have a lot to talk about here. I'm going to pop the scroll on here. It barely fit. There's just full transparency. There's 1,000 characters allowed for these scrolls, and we're at 977. That's how many matches there are. 16 matches. We do have some things to talk about here, but before we get started, The concept, if you are unfamiliar with the Lethal Lottery or the Battle Bowl concept, I want to give you a little bit of the history of it because to me, it is, I guess, a good idea on paper, but in execution, it is very messy. And it creates a lot of front loading that is unnecessary. And it doesn't age as well as it probably maybe appeared at the time, but maybe not. So the Lethal Lottery, the Battle Bowl concept, was originally introduced for WCW in 1991 Starrcade's pay-per-view, which was held in December 29th, 1991. The concept of the Lethal Lottery would see names drawn at random to form tag teams, although, as with all professional wrestling, this is staged to appear random, as we know. The teams, sometimes consistent of two people who were involved in a storyline feud with each other, would compete against other random teams to see which team would move on to the Battle Bowl portion of the tournament. The Battle Bowl itself was an over-the-top rope elimination battle royal between all winning tag teams. So in 91, they used the Battle Bowl to further a storyline between Lex Luger, who was the champion at the time, and Sting. WCW held another Lethal Lottery Battle Bowl tournament the next year at Starrcade in 1992, which was won by the Great Muta. But the tournament win did not result in further storylines. It's just a one-off, just one-night thing. And WCW abandoned that whole Battle Bowl concept following this year in 1996. So the last one that was held here, that was it. So in 2001, WWE bought WCW, gaining ownership of all its programming, including the Battle Bowl show. When the WWE Network launched in 2014, the show became available on demand. They have the rights to do it again. Hopefully they never do it again, but they could if they wanted to. Wouldn't shock me if they did it in NXT or something, because they take all those small events and do it, like Halloween Havoc, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it sounds something very NXT.
So other promotions have used similar concepts to the Lethal Lottery Battle Bowl tournament after WCW created it in 1991. Chikara held the La Lorita in 2008, which adopted the Lethal Lottery portion of the tournament by drawing random names for the tag teams. In 2013, TNA adopted the Lethal Lottery concept with the Joker's Wild tournament, held it during their one-night only pay-per-view series. The Joker's Wild tournament included both the Lethal Lottery portion and the Battle Bowl portion, with the winners being given a cash prize instead of a title shot. So there's your history of it, just to give you the results, because that's what we're unpacking here. There's so much to talk about from Slamboree. So,
Hell yeah.
Mike Belcaster, set the scene for me as you are sitting down, maybe a little style and grace, maybe a little drink as you pop on Slamboree 1996, live from Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Yeah, no, it's going into it, I was just mentally thinking clusterfuck, which, I mean, it kind of was a clusterfuck, but
it was, yes.
Yeah, I just sat down, hanging out. It was still in the mountains, so I was already Rocky Mountain high. I was already enjoying it.
Elevation makes you a little bit of a lightweight, which, we've all been there.
Hey, man, it absolutely does. But, I was so looking forward to see it play out and see how it happened. So I was ready to jump right into it.
So this event took place May 19th, 1996, as I mentioned, from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, at the Riverside Centroplex. The current WCW champions right now, we have the world champion, The Giant, the U.S. champion, Conan, the tag team champions, still Sting and Lex Luger, the TV champions, Lex Luger, and the cruiserweight champion is Dean Malenko. As I discussed last week, Dean Malenko won the title literally the day before on a Saturday night taping, which was taped the week before. They were doing a whole bunch in bulk because of the Olympics coming up. Man, it was a mess because Dean Malenko was champion, but they also they had Jushin Liger have the championship. So they also at these tapings just had people come out without their titles, including the world champion, because they're like, you know what? If everything goes awry, we just don't need to retape it. No titles involved. So it's just really shitty. So yeah. Dean Malenko is officially champion as of the day before.
Yeah.
All right. So our hosts are Tony Schiavone, Dusty Rhodes, and Bobby Heenan. I love that they have a different team for Nitro and a different team for the pay-per-views. It makes them feel special.
Absolutely, man. And I mean, how you throw Dusty in the mix on anything, already amazing on the mic, but on commentary, he's just so goddamn good, Daddy. He's the king of the world.
And he's passionate about this and Bischoff doesn't confirm it in the 83 Weeks podcast, but he does allude to saying the Battle Bowl stuff is Dusty Rhodes' creation. And he tries to sell it as the best thing ever when you have guys of a tag team that means something wrestling each other. I mean, the fact this opening match, we have the Road Warrior Animal and Booker T taking on Road Warrior Hawk and Lex Luger. Did you have any, and me, I'll give you my answer in a sec. Did you have any interest in seeing the Road Warriors ever wrestle each other?
No, I mean, on paper, it sounds like you said about the whole event. On paper, it sounds awesome. You know, you got two big bad motherfuckers just beating the shit out of each other, and listen, there's nothing wrong with it, but I don't know. This whole pay-per-view is just lackluster because of that. Like, it's a weird concept. But I can hear Dusty trying to pitch it. Like, no, man, you're gonna have Animal and Booker T with the Road Warrior Hulk, man, and the sexy Lex Luger. It's gonna be beautiful, man. But it's just Dusty could probably sell it, but I think that's as far as it goes.
Yeah, I think in theory it sounds like a fun thing, maybe done over the course of a couple nights. But the fact that it's like, you're starting this whole thing tonight, and there's still a battle royal, and there's still championship matches on top of it. It's a lot to get through. Especially when it's inconsequential when you have these tag teams wrestling each other with nothing on the line and they don't want to wrestle each other.
It reminds me of like a kid playing the video game, like playing 2K22, and he's like, "Oh yeah, dude, wouldn't it be cool if you put Hawk with Booker T?" It doesn't make any fucking sense, but it was more entertaining than I was expecting.
For sure. And so we have the opening match, and unfortunately for us, or fortunately, maybe not, it ends in a no contest, double countout. So we will be taking a shot of nostalgia following me just running down what happened in the match. As we mentioned, there's nothing random about this because not only do we get the obvious possibility of Hawk versus Animal, Luger and Booker, both have had their problems at LOD, so they're tied with the storylines already. So it's hard to believe they would even be random. But this was an okay match. The one interesting note, as I mentioned, it ended in a double countout. The Road Warriors were celebrating in the ring like they won. This would be the last time you'll see the Road Warriors in WCW together. Word on the street was that they got mad over how much Hall and Nash were getting paid to come into WCW and decided to leave. Animal would return in 2000, 2001, but Hawk would never step foot in another WCW ring again. So some history there. I believe that is true. And I think Hall and Nash said in some shoot interviews about how LOD wanted to get paid. And I'm calling them LOD because I'm WWF Mark. The Road Warriors wanted to get paid handsomely because they believe they deserve more money than Scott Hall and Kevin Nash did. And maybe going in, you believe something like that. This is the problem when you give people guaranteed money. It starts to get really messy.
Absolutely. I mean, this was the birth of it all too. I mean, people argue Mero's got the first guaranteed contract, whatever. It doesn't matter. But you got Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, who I mean, if in this moment in time, I would believe the Road Warriors would be worth more than Scott Hall and Kevin Nash.
Yeah.
Until they prove it. There should have been stipulations to it. Like, oh, if you generate enough buzz in 60 days, then you'll get this amount of money. But if you don't do that, then we're gonna have to renegotiate. So yeah, rightfully so. They should have been pissed off and flipped the table and got the fuck out of there.
Yeah, especially with what they were brought in, and we've watched the booking go sour for them a little bit. Like, they look strong, and especially here, they don't lose, but they never feel like they're that team. I mean, they're with always around the tag titles, but never given the tag titles during this run. Where you sign a team like that for a lot of money, guaranteed money, you would think that they would put the kind of the rocket ship on them, especially whether they can work or not. They seem uninvested, my opinion, watching them work during this run. But whether or not they're invested or not, you paid a lot of money that they have this stock, and the only way you can use them is put them in big matches. Yeah. And they just never did it here. They were wrestling Public Enemy. It just never felt like it got going.
No, absolutely.
But we do have the shot of nostalgia. What is your drink of choice today?
I am drinking a little bit of Terramana, but it's a full glass because I heard some some rumor that it was going to be a big one. So we're going to be nifty sipping.
So I got my Bacardi over here, starting the 4th of July weekend. Some little white rum going. I got my shots poured already.
Like it.
So for double count out, and again, just to be clear, double countouts, non-finishes, false advertised matches, and DQs will get us all shots of nostalgia. So
I'm ready.
Cheers, Mike Belcaster. Happy 4th
Cheers
to my Macho Man buddy, Belly to Belcaster, baby. Let's get going.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So as I mentioned, this match went 6 minutes and 52 seconds. Both teams are now eliminated. They will not be involved in the Battle Bowl Battle Royal. So this is the last we'll see of these guys for the night for now. Ooh. So next match here is we have the Public Enemy, Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge defeating Chris Benoit and the Taskmaster. So Benoit and Sullivan teaming is very awkward, especially the history we know that goes down with them and all that.
Yeah.
This match goes 4 minutes and 43 seconds. Very, very quick. Fun match to me. Like seeing Benoit in this element, especially with Public Enemy, is kind of interesting because they have such different styles.
Yeah.
Benoit and Sullivan, again, very, very awkward together. And I think that's part of the storyline because they don't like each other. Rocco handles Benoit in the beginning pretty well with head scissor takedowns. This might have been the best the Public Enemies looked for me, like not involved in table spots and things like that. It went short, but the fact that it actually, it highlighted Public Enemy in a good way. I liked it because it for the first time I felt like they were a legitimate tag team.
Yeah, no, I can totally agree with you. It was good to see them showcasing themselves other than doing their normal ECW shit, and it's just crazy. I can't believe that there's how many matches were on this card, how short the matches are. Like, if this is like that thing, it seems like they're filling instead of trying to pack shit in. You know what I mean? So like they're just, we'll do this 4-minute match with Benoit and Taskmaster and fucking Public Enemy. Like that, it would be quick. Like,
and this might have been just shooting the angle because this starts a year-long feud that we're going to be seeing a lot of Chris Benoit and Kevin Sullivan against each other. So this is the start of it because they, by happenstance, they get teamed together with the Battle Bowl, and they lose. And because of the fact that they didn't get along, Benoit is upset and Kevin Sullivan is upset as well. So we're going to see some of this feud, and we better get used to it because the rest of 96 has a lot of Kevin Sullivan, Chris Benoit going at each other.
Yeah.
Next match here, we have Rick Steiner and the Booty Man defeating Scott Steiner and Sergeant Craig Pittman. Pittman has a manager finally, and it's Teddy Long, who is the manager throughout a lot of different eras of WCW. And again, the odds are about as staggering as the pairings in the Battle Bowl. These guys have history together as well, so they make sure to say these are random drawings, but every single one of these matchups are anything but random. There's a whole bunch of history with the feuds. The Steiners have issues with the Booty Man and Sergeant Craig Pittman, so there's a lot to be said here that they're not random. Just admit they're not. We know they're not, but don't make people feel like they're idiots when you're watching the product.
Yeah.
All right, so we have this match go 8 minutes and 22 seconds. The setup for the Code Red Booty inches over to Rick for a tag under the top rope. The ref allows a tag that wasn't seen, and Rick res Pittman for a bridging German suplex for the pin. It was random in my opinion, but the good news with Scott versus Rick was a little bit fun to see. I like seeing them go after each other. We do see it more throughout WCW when they both go on their singles run. It's just too bad they couldn't compete at this level when they get to 98. I think Scott Steiner gets too big, becomes too muscular. But this is the Rick and Scott Steiner that you want to see. I mean, not quite the WWF in-ring style that you got, but they were still very, very good here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some good spots here. I mean, T-bone superplex was a really fun spot. German suplex is suplex. Like, I love the way the Steiners work. Yeah. I can't say the same about Booty Man and Sergeant Craig Pittman, but this was a lot of fun. Like having Rick and Scott, that's a match I can get behind.
Absolutely. Listen, anytime the Steiners are in the ring together or against each other, it's a spectacle. And they were built different, man. We hear that a lot. But the Steiners were definitely built different, and they were always a spectacle to watch. Always fun to watch, man. You go back and watch any Steiners match, and you can't shit on it. Like it's just, they're just great fucking matches, man.
Yeah, by the end of the career, I think people look at Scott Steiner for like his TNA run, like with the math meme and all that stuff, but people forget how much he accomplished for a very long time, early 90s throughout. I mean, he was a big part of the later WCW years, for better or for worse. And even that run 2003 wasn't as good as people probably wanted it, but we did get a nice little run for Scott Steiner throughout 2003.
Yeah.
So
no, absolutely.
We have the next match here. We have Jim Duggan and VK Wall Street defeating the Blue Bloods, Lord Stephen Regal and Squire David Taylor. So originally it was supposed to be Regal and Finlay together, but Finlay got injured in the parking lot brawl in April and headed back to Ireland. So fellow Blue Blood Squire Dave Taylor took his place. Probably the highlight of 96 for me is that parking lot brawl.
Yeah, no, so far. I mean, this has been fantastic. It was one of the best things I think WCW did with their lower card talents. I think they did a really good job, man. And how can you not love Regal and Finley just beating the piss out of each other, whether it be in a ring or in a parking lot. It's the best shit ever.
So good. And the fact that you still have this feud continuing, even without the fact that Finley is not here anymore, it speaks a lot to the work that they were doing together.
Yeah.
VK Wall Street was main eventing a couple weeks ago. I think he wrestled Ric Flair, as we talked about. He has no place in WCW, in my opinion. He's, especially as a heel. The issue I had with VK Wall Street versus Ric Flair was the fact that Ric Flair is a heel. VK Wall Street is a heel. And if you want Ric Flair to be booed, especially through the program he has continuing with Macho Man, they're not going to boo a guy like Ric Flair against a heel like VK Wall Street. So this is never going to happen. It's just bad booking.
Yeah.
Anyway, this match goes 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Very, very short. We see the finish, Duggan fighting off the Blue Bloods and nails Wall Street and tapes up his fist to knock out Taylor for the 1-2-3. Jim Duggan gets the pin here. Short match. They're sprinting through these. If you're watching this, I mean, if we go through the first couple matches, opening match, 6 minutes and 52 seconds. Second match, 4 minutes and 43 seconds. We had 8 minutes and 22 seconds for the Steiner match. And then this one was only 3 minutes and 47 seconds. So quick. Not really my style. Like, I like my opening matches setting the tone for the night. It feels like this match, this card, and rightfully so, it's 16 matches. It takes a bit to really get going. And I don't know if it actually really does. It never really does get going.
Yeah, no, less is more always. I hate when they do stuff like this. No matter what company does it, no matter anything, you need these beginning matches to have like a tone, a pace, and not just like 1, 2, 3, let's get it done. Nobody wants that clusterfuck happening. You need depth, you need filler. Nobody goes swimming in the kiddie pool when you're 6 feet tall. You need that depth in there to enjoy it. You can't just stand around and be like, oh yeah, this is gonna be fun.
Speaking of short matches, this one's even shorter. We have Dick Slater and Earl Robert Eden defeating Disco Inferno and Alex Wright. So not much to even talk about with this match. It's every bit as bad as you probably think it would be. They tried to do a hot tag to Disco Inferno, which I put in my notes. That's never going to work. Wright and Eden dump each other to the floor. Colonel distracts the ref as Slater wallops Disco when he's dancing in the back of the head with the boot. That's it. 2 minutes and 57 seconds. Dick Slater and Earl Robert Eden advance to the Battle Bowl Battle Royal. So that's it for that match. Absolute garbage, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So this match, very interesting matchup. 3 of the 4 guys are interesting to watch. We have the Faces of Fear being split up here. Diamond Dallas Page and the Barbarian defeating Ming and Hugh Morris. So just for note, this is DDP's first match back since he lost everything at Uncensored. He's got new tights with the DDP logo on the hips. So we're seeing the repackage of DDP. And as you guys saw on the logo of this whole podcast, we have DDP on the cover. I feel like this is the emergence of Diamond Dallas Page in the newer era. And of course, it takes a little bit for him to get to the point where he becomes world champion. But I think he's right on his way to becoming that people's champion gimmick that we all really got behind as WCW fans. He was one of the highlights of WCW throughout the late 90s.
Yeah, no, 100% agree.
So some highlights of this match. We have Barbarian kicking Ming down to the mat. Page comes in, gets pressed onto Ming. After all that, Barbarian misses an elbow drop and takes a diving headbutt from Ming. Hugh Morris tags and heads up to the top rope for an elbow drop. And DDP was supposed to crotch him, it looked like, so it was a little bit awkward there. They do the same spot again, and this time they succeed. Barbarian brings Morris down with a belly-to-belly. So going to the finish here, both Faces of Fear guys deliver the kick of fear and make the cover, but Page has his foot under the bottom rope during the count, and Morris doesn't. So with that, DDP and Barbarian advance 5 minutes and 17 seconds. One of the better matches of the evening. I thought it was a lot of fun. It spoke a lot to DDP and where he started, where we first saw him. A little bit awkward, didn't know what to do coming out. His tights look weird, didn't look like they fit him. And now the DDP moniker is really getting going. And I love Ming, man. I love the Face of Fear. I think they're one of the better tag teams in WCW history.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's good to see Page kind of falling into his own space. He's not the Diamond Stud. He's not just Vinny Vegas. He's not that moniker. He's growing out. He's finally becoming himself. And it's cool. And I'd like to see him in, filling this role. He was like you said, he was one of the most important parts of the WCW history, I think. Really getting his run and as an older person too. You know, he's not 22 and you know, he doesn't look like Austin Theory. You know, he's Diamond Dallas Page, so it's cool. But come on, you got Ming Barbarian. I mean, even Hugh Morris is a big guy, so fun to watch. Just him getting thrown around. Yeah, it was a fun match, man. Good shit.
Yeah, I think Hugh Morris gets a lot of, I guess, heat for his later run with Bill DeMott, and then also all this stuff that went on with him bullying as a trainer and all that. But as a mid-card worker in WCW, the gimmick was cheesy, but he was just there. And like, I think he was a decent worker. And this match, to me, despite it being 5 minutes and 17 seconds, it's one of the highlights of the night for me, especially out of all these matches. I thought it did a good job. And the finish was interesting because you had two covers and both guys got the win, but the foot under the rope got DDP, his count to count, and then the other one didn't because of I guess a faulty ref decision, which I thought it was an interesting way to book it. I mean, a lot happens in 5 minutes. I'm trying to think of any match on an AEW pay-per-view today that would go 5 minutes. I just can't even think about it. They're still sizing each other up.
Not unless they were just putting somebody over with a local talent. A Jade match could go 5 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even like Willow Nightingale got offense that was more than 5 minutes. I mean, I go back and watch the match on Rampage a couple weeks ago. I think she still got, maybe it went less than 5, but it just shows you like just how much it's changed in the wrestling. But this is pay-per-view. Like people are paying to watch this.
Crazy.
Yeah. So our next match here, we have Fire and Ice, Scott Norton and Ice Train defeating Big Bubba Rogers and Stevie Ray. This one's a little bit more random than usual. 3 minutes and 33 seconds. So the last time we saw Big Bubba, he's turned into a biker guy and he's joined up with Dungeon of Doom. Looks weird. He's, doing something different. I don't remember this era of Bubba Rogers. This was a quick match again too. So we had Norton tagging and whips Bubba into Stevie Ray in the apron, sets up Fire and Ice double team running shoulder block on Bubba as Norton gets the pin. 3 minutes and 33 seconds. Not much to talk about here. They're just building towards the Battle Royal. Just get guys in, qualify them, and move on to the next match.
Yeah.
So again, not much to say about that match. The next match, we do have a lot to say, and this was a fun match, short match for the guys involved, because I think they have the Battle Royal later and they got to work 2 times. But we have Ric Flair and Randy Savage teaming together against Arn Anderson and Eddie Guerrero. Just for a second, look at those 4 names in the ring together.
It's insane. Just the fact that they're all in the ring together. It doesn't matter what they're teaming with. The concept doesn't matter. I mean, Legendary doesn't even explain that. This is iconic, man. This is it. This is somebody's Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling.
Yeah.
In one tag match.
Yep. So Flair's music hits first and before Savage makes his entrance, which makes you think Savage might have done something to Flair. But no, Flair just didn't want Savage coming up behind him. Eddie's just in the way here of the Flair AAA beatdown on Savage. So Eddie's trying to Eddie at this point, you got to remember, he was not as established as he would become. He's still sort of just a guy on the card. He's having some good matches throughout, for the U.S. title later in the year. But he's not the Eddie Guerrero that carried SmackDown in 2004 is my point. You see shades of it and just shows how natural of a worker he is and how polished he is at such a young age. And he still has a long way to go as far as gimmick goes and all that. But Eddie Guerrero, man, he hangs in there with the best of them. And I would love to see even like a WrestleMania match. Like think about the combination of Randy Savage versus Eddie Guerrero in a big spot. Like it had me imagining this and seeing them touch. It's really, really cool to think about because I put Eddie in 2 different bins for myself. Like I look at Eddie in WWE and I look at this run of Eddie Guerrero in WCW. They're like 2 different people to me. I don't know why I look at it that way, but they feel like 2 different people.
No, absolutely. I mean, you got the younger, still kind of developing everything, Eddie Guerrero in WCW, and he never really got as big as he should have probably in WCW. So like when he went to WWE, they kind of strapped a rocket to him, and I mean not just WWE doing it, but I mean Eddie had more character in WWE. So I feel like he came across way, way bigger. I mean, that the stint with him in China, some of the funniest, like purest comedy gold that happens there. And then that's not even his wrestling ability. And then you get him in the ring and he delivers. So, I mean, it's Eddie Guerrero's I'll say it again. He was built different.
Built different. So we I mean, you look at the people here, especially how they're booked. You know that Eddie's taking the fall here, and that's just what happened. Flair allowing Double A to run in and DDT Eddie. This allows Arn to pull Savage off Flair and toss him to the guardrail while Flair covers Eddie for the 1-2-3. Match went 4 minutes and 6 seconds. It felt longer. It was well booked. A lot of heat being filled in here. Arn was only trying to win the match after the Spinebuster. His primary job as the enforcer is to enforce Flair's plan to become world champion. So that's probably why the reason it went so short. Eddie stood no chance here.
Yeah.
Savage did a great job of making it as dramatic as possible, in my opinion. His facial expressions, everything about Randy Savage is so on point. And we talked about this every time we see Randy on our screen. He's just next level. There's things he does, nuanced behavior that you can't teach somebody. You can't say, go out there and look like you're desperate. Don't go out there and look like you want it worse than somebody else. You can't teach what Randy Savage has. And he just has a big match feel. Even when he's doing something like this, like the Battle Bowl Lethal Lottery concept, he still feels like it's a big deal when he's in the ring.
No, 100%. He sells the concept. You know, listen, you could go out there and put 4 guys in the match, and as we see with Alex Wright and fucking Disco Inferno, it's shits. But like, you get somebody as a Savage or a Flair, it makes it more meaningful, and Savage delivers everything so well. The dramatics, the over the top character, the matches. That's what it's all about. You know, so it's a fucking this was probably one of my favorite matches from the night. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, especially with the history that goes into it, and like looking at where these guys went in their careers. I mean, Ric Flair's still wrestling today. Him and Arn are the only ones that are still with us today. But there's so much knowledge of the wrestling business in ring and out of the ring that it's crazy to see, and it was awesome to see them locking up, and it ages very, very, very well. So before we move on to the next match, we had some random second round drawings for the Battle Bowl with Gene Okerlund and a trio of Hooters girls. Because of the double count out in the first match, Gene has to pick a bye and who will go straight to the Battle Royal. So he chose Fire and Ice for whatever reason. In the second round, Ethan and Slater will meet Wall Street and Duggan, which is like, whatever. Not exactly sure. My notes are okay. So as you see over my shoulder, I did actually put up the Duggan 2x4. Just give some love to Jim Duggan. And, you know, I know we rip on him a lot here. Not rip on him, but like, he's not my favorite part of WCW 1996. It doesn't mean that, you know, I'm less of a fan than him. I just don't think he fits what's going on here in this era.
No, absolutely. I'm not the biggest Jim Duggan fan, match wise, but character. You know, he was a great part of wrestling history, and respect the man for everything. He's Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I mean, come on, who doesn't like going ho? You know.
So our next match here, we have the WCW World Cruiserweight Championship. Dean Malenko defeating Brad Armstrong. So as I mentioned, Malenko had just won the Cruiserweight title from Otani. So he didn't win it from Liger. Liger lost to Otani in the finals of the tournament. But Shinjiro Otani had the title as of the day before on Worldwide. 2 days earlier, Malenko beat him. So that, as I mentioned before, there was a discrepancy of how to present it because he had won the title 2 weeks prior. So he wasn't champion in theory, and people did know that, and the dirt sheets had it. But with taping in bulk, it gets a little bit messy with presenting your product in cohesion with what's going on in the storylines, because things do change. What you forget is people can get hurt. You tape 4 weeks out, people can get hurt, and then all of a sudden you can't pay off that match you built up for a full month. It's a risky business to be doing that. Absolutely, man. This match was pretty good. It was one of the longer matches, 8 minutes and 34 seconds. The Cruiserweight title, you could tell, similar to these the AEW titles that they're bringing in, there's divisions that are already set up, and the Cruiserweight division had already been set up prior to the title being involved. It feels like a big deal. Brad Armstrong, I mean, not my first choice of opponent for Dean Malenko in a big spot here, but Dean Malenko, he's unbelievable. He has the ability to make anyone look good. I mean, one little note here, Brad Armstrong was the final WCW light heavyweight champion in 1992 and had to give up the belt when he injured his knee. A title tournament was rumored to fill the vacancy, but was never carried out. And then the title disappeared before the Cruiserweight title appeared in 1996. So little history here on Shot Nostalgia. So he does have longevity as a light heavyweight or cruiserweight, however you want to say it. But Dean Malenko gets the win here by hooking in the cloverleaf. I know he hit the super gut buster. He actually reversed the Texas Cloverleaf that it was put on him. And he gets the 1-2-3. So fun match here. Title feels like it means something. And that's really, really fun because the division has this little niche that a lot of people claim is their favorite thing. I know Chad on the flagship was saying one of the reasons he loved WCW was because of the Cruiserweight Championship and how they made it feel important.
Absolutely. And like that's the thing. Dean Malenko, I know he gets his flowers a little bit, but I don't think he's one of the most underrated wrestlers ever. I loved Dean Malenko. I don't know what it was, but every time he was on, and I was a little kid watching this shit, I was ready to roll. And like I loved watching the Texas Cloverleaf is still to this day one of my favorite submissions ever. Like it's just it rocks, man. And
one of the better variations of the sharpshooter.
Beautiful, and like the way you hook the arm and pull up, and like it was just cool. And it was I don't know, Dean came off as this badass every time he was on my screen. And like I said, the Cloverleaf is like not a lot of people threw back to it, and they just started kind of doing it a little bit more recently. I know a couple guys in AEW do it here and there, but like I fucking love Dean Malenko, man. I never understood why he didn't get further along. He was so damn good.
I said it last week when we were talking about him, especially when he won the Cruiserweight title, that even when he came in 2001 with the Radicals, he felt like he was the fourth fiddle. Like even Perry Saturn felt bigger than him for some reason. And who knows why, we know Vince has an obsession with bigger guys, and Dean Malenko obviously is not on the bigger side. And even Eddie Guerrero is not either, and neither is Benoit, but they both carry themselves in a different way. And I think Dean Malenko was shoehorned in being just this Cruiserweight light heavyweight guy. And he definitely had his run there. I think he was feuding for the European title. Eventually he was feuding I think he won the light heavyweight championship. So he was having good matches throughout WWE, but it never really caught on to the part where, like, if he wrestled today, he could probably be a main eventer just for the sheer talent alone. Look at a guy like John Gresham's 5'3", Dean Malenko. Wow. Like he could be a main eventer all over the place.
You just put a dream match in my head that I didn't know I wanted to see. Now I wish we had the honor to see Gresham versus Malenko. What a great match it would be. Under Ring of Honor, pure rules. Ooh.
I'm confident though, if you put Dean Malenko out there, whatever age he is now, in that suit as a producer, he could still have a better match than most guys on any roster. Like it's probably muscle memory. You go out there and teach everybody a thing or two in the ring. I'm very confident of that. And, we have Flair still wrestling in 2022. I'm sure Malenko can lace up the boots one more time and do it. But I'm sure his career feels like he wants it to be, remember the greatness. And I remember all matches being such a high bar. So,
yeah, I think all right. Malenko's got Parkinson's now, which is very sad. But
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's got something. He's got some disease. I think it's Parkinson's. I'm pretty sure. But he's just doing the producer role for AEW, which is, I'm glad he's still there. That's the best. I would love to see him wrestle more, though. That's a shame. Damn shame.
Well, if you even think about it today, like he just missed that era where those guys, think about the open door policy, not just with New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW, but going to GCW, working MLW, working all these other indie dates. He would have a blast doing that, working with guys all over the place. I could just see him in GCW being a nice contrast to the death match. Have him in the ring working a guy like Nick Wayne, or in the ring working a guy like Ninja Mac, or Blake Christian, having these matches that are just very. GCW does a really good job. If you guys don't watch GCW, make sure you check out the GCW show that we have here in the Tavern. But they do a good job of making the stark difference between death matches and these technical matches, and Dean Malenko would fit so perfectly on their card. So you have me fantasy booking myself.
I love it.
So we had more random second round drawing. So we'll talk about those matches in a second. So we have Dick Slater and Earl Robert Eden defeating Jim Duggan and VK Wall Street. This match went 4 minutes and 9 seconds. This was a very, very dumb finish, in my opinion. Duggan strikes back to cause Wall Street to fall backwards into a roll up. So just a very awkward looking schoolboy. Ugly match. I feel bad for Robert Eaton here. It feels like he's kind of I don't know, left out to dry here.
Yeah, no, this was another one. It's just like, meh, I got nothing for it.
All right, so we have a forfeit here, so which means we have another shot nostalgia to take. Public Enemy was supposed to take on Ric Flair and Randy Savage, but there was no match. Liz starts tossing Savage's money out to the crowd during the entrance, and Savage attacks Flair. Public Enemy, by default, advances to the Battle Bowl by forfeit. So we have a shot to take here.
Ooh, yeah.
I have it ready to go. All right. Cheers. Ric Flair and Randy Savage, and also Dean Malenko.
Yeah, how is Liz getting Savage's money if she's with Flair? It just doesn't.
It's just alimony. I don't know what's going on, guys.
He's got an ATM in the back. Like,
Exactly.
Got the Macho Man wardrobe on it. She just goes up, takes out some money.
We know Venmo didn't exist then, so we don't know how she's getting it. Our next match here, we have DDP and the Barbarian defeating Rick and the Booty Man. This match goes 5 minutes and 7 seconds. There's some good moves here and there. Ultimately, it's a good feeling to know the Lethal Lottery tag matches are now over. This is the last one. So DDP does get the win here with the Barbarian. This is a nice little teaming with the two of them. Steiner and the Booty Man I can live without. There are some cool spots here. Again, the Steiner stuff with the belly-to-belly superplexes. The Steiner line, Barbarian comes back with a power bomb. There was a false tag spot with Steiner and Booty, causing Rick to get dumped over the top rope and DDP to kick him down into the corner of the ring. Fun match here. But again, happy that they're over. My final thoughts on these matches is that they're cool in theory, but I think if you have qualifier matches leading up on Nitro and then have the payoff being the finals and then the Battle Bowl Battle Royal would go a long way. Yeah, no,
I always wish they would do that with like the Rumble. Like you earn a spot to pull the number. The way it's more meaningful when you're in there. Like when they do the random shit like that and they just force it, it sucks. But like you can really build it out nicely and make it cool. I mean, we got Rampage tonight. They got that big battle royal with the 2 rings. World War III love, by the way. I'm so excited for it. But I mean, it's so if they would have put a little bit more like enthusiasm towards it on the build, where like, oh, we'll throw Max Caster in a match with Billy Gunn and see whoever wins gets a spot. Like that makes it more important because you're like, oh shit, yeah, this guy wants to earn his title. So it's like the random shit together. It's just fucking weird.
No, I agree, and I think a lot of they tried to emphasize it on commentary. They consistently say this is random, the drawing's random. But when you have guys that are already feuding together and they're like mixed, it just don't insult our intelligence. Just say like they put them together to make it fun. Like I don't know, the concept is cool in theory, and like seeing it on paper, seeing the Road Warriors wrestling each other, seeing the Steiners wrestle each other, seeing Faces of Fear against each other. Yeah, to me, I guess aesthetically feels pleasing at first, but then when you see it kind of play out on paper, it's a popcorn fart, my man. It's awful.
Absolutely, man.
All right, our next match is the United States Championship. We have Conan defeating Jushin Thunder Liger. This match, man, I can't say enough nice things about Conan, but Jushin Thunder Liger is a lot of fun as well. I actually changed my background of my computer right over here to Liger because one of the cooler masks in all of wrestling history. And he did it for a long time following this and a long time before this. His career is just as long as anybody. And he's very influential. I mean, a lot of his work, people know him for the New Japan stuff, but a lot of good stuff here. This match was awesome. We see him defending successfully his U.S. title. What were your thoughts on this match, Mike Belcaster?
I'm one of the biggest Liger marks. I'm a big Conan mark. I think it could have been a little better, but I mean, by what means? Like it was an awesome, fun match to watch. I think, as you were saying, Liger's got one of the most lengthiest careers, one of the best gimmicks. His Storm Collectibles action figures, one of the best action figure lines, man. Yeah, they're so fucking beautiful looking. But yeah, man, it's awesome. I love the back and forth here. I want more of it. Like this is like the cruiserweight era is just. I mean, like you said before, they set it up and it's kind of filling out. But like, this is beautiful, man. These are two of the greatest fucking legends before they were legends in the ring doing their thing. I love it, man.
A lot of near falls here. So we get the first one was the Fisher Buster gets a really close 2 count. Conan hits the Alabama Slam for another 2 count. Liger slips out of Splashbound into a failed sunset flip. Liger bomb connects. Thought it was over. Another near fall. He heads up for the flying headbutt. and Liger flies face first into both feet. Conan grabs Liger and delivers the splash mountain for the quick 3. Like you said, it could have been better, but I think the standards are just super high when you look at both these guys and the level that Conan was working at this point and what I expect from Thunder Liger throughout history about what he's able to do. This was really good, especially on this card. You needed this like breath of fresh air, especially coming it was like coming up from being underwater for a bit, like, oh, finally we get some actually decent wrestling for longer than 2 minutes.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's the thing too, is like, in 1996, this was probably a huge match. Like, it was probably like, especially watching the shit card, like in this day and age, you're probably like, wow, these two guys are phenomenal, and it's like seeing Star Wars for the first time. You're like, what the fuck did I just watch? This is wild. And like, you fall in love with it, man. So kudos. It was good shit.
Yeah, so just to note, Dusty left commentary to go check on the conditioner, Randy Savage, and Mike Tenay was at commentary here. So Tenay has a long career as well, and we see him continue on into Impact and all that. And I don't know if he's still there or not, but he spent some time in WCW for a long time following this. He just wasn't as highlighted as most of these other guys are in big events.
Absolutely. But I remember Tenay from WCW. And that's
yeah,
why
for sure.
That's why I liked him in TNA. It's like, oh shit, it's fucking Mike Tenay, man.
Yeah, I always look at Tenay, and I know this may be a hot take for people, but as the store brand Tony Schiavone, like he tried to be Tony, in my opinion, but he just never was. But again, this is coming from someone that's not a WCW mark, admittedly so, from back in the day. So that was just my take on Tenay. Like, is that Schiavone? No, it's not him. So before we move on to the Battle Bowl Battle Royal for the #1 contendership for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, we had Gene Okerlund bringing out Flair. Gene brings up Deborah, which brings out Steve McMichael. Flair stands behind AA. Mongo makes a challenge to both of them. He says he can team up with them. So McMichael waves over to Kevin Green, and there's your main event for Great American Bash. So, building up to the next pay-per-view, which is pretty soon, like in a couple weeks. Like, and I was looking at our schedule, and I was like, oh man, another pay-per-view is coming up pretty soon. So they're gonna start to bang them out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I like when there's the little time in between, as long as the build's right. But like, we're gonna get some good fucking Botchamania Mongo in a few, and I'm excited for it.
So we have this 8-man Battle Bowl Battle Royal, and the participants are the finalists from all these tag matches. So we have DDP, the Barbarian, Rocco Rock, Johnny Grunge, Scott Norton, Ice Train, Dick Slater, and Earl Robert Eden. I asked you, Mike Belcaster, who else could have won this match? Like, looking at everybody else in this match, it had to be DDP. For the love of God, we had to have DDP win this match. Because maybe the Barbarian versus the Giant has some appeal. Yeah. But everybody else, I mean, Robert Eden, great worker, but he has the Revolutionary War Englishman gimmick at this point. Nobody else could have wrestled for the world title except DDP.
Listen, I'm looking at just the group here. I mean, Scott Norton would have been interesting in like 97, NWO Scott Norton. I don't know. Barbarian and the Giant, they have that thing that we were talking about earlier, is height. You put them next to each other, the Barbarian probably make the Giant look a lot smaller than they were trying to portray him as. So, I mean, DDP is the guy. DDP is the guy. And it's awesome that they're pushing him and they're trying to get him to that spot. I know it takes a while still, but I mean, this is the planting of the seeds. So I'm here for it.
So this was very reminiscent of and the influence is so clear with AEW, with this person being called Lord of the Ring. Like, we have the Dynamite Diamond Ring that we see the tournament, and very similar to this. This is a very disjointed in the booking because of it. It is a battle royal in name, but there is guys that get pinned and thrown over the top rope. And this is what I'm talking about with making a mockery of the rules and your fans. People start to really, at first, like, they'll look past it. You have a lot of casual fans watching, but things need to make sense. It's a battle royal, and there are people that get eliminated, and they're selling the fact that DDP gets thrown over the top rope a few times and his feet don't touch. They were doing his feet didn't touch. But then we got guys that get pinned. So I'm going to read you some spots here. So let me go through here. So heel miscommunication causes Slater to miss Norton with his boot and knock Eden over the top rope to the floor. He's eliminated. Colonel Parker smacks Eden around with his hat, which riles up Eden and knock Parker down on the backside. Slater eliminates himself to get at Eden, and Slater tries to get back inside and nails Norton from behind. So as you can see, people are getting eliminated over the top rope. But then we move to the final four, and maybe they made it clear, like, maybe I missed it, that they said once the final four, and then you have to pin somebody. So our final four is Ice Train, Johnny Grunge, Barbarian, and DDP. Page starts dishing out diamond cutters to everybody. He pins Grunge, pins Ice Train, only gets 2 on Barbarian. So they're eliminated after the diamond cutters in a battle royal. It made no sense to me.
Yeah.
Like what? When could you? I don't understand what I was watching. I'm like, I had to rewind and be like, am I missing something here?
Yeah, no, and so like in the video game, I think that this was established in the old WCW games for like PlayStation, or it might have been the Nintendo 64 one or something, but they had this kind of like stipulation: you could pin people in the battle royals, but also throw them over the top rope. It was weird, but it doesn't seem so foreign to me. I mean, if you are just strictly, oh, I've seen Royal Rumbles, I would totally be like, what the fuck is this?
I'm stuck on the word battle royal, I guess, because of the stipulation of battle royal, and it could be just my Fed brain going off a little bit. I got a little Fed brain stuck in there. I'm still trying to work out the kinks a little bit.
It's a dusty product, so there's cluster fucking all over the place.
So we have the ending C of really close near fall with Barbarian hitting a tombstone on DDP for a 2 count. The crowd thought Barbarian was getting the win here. Page low blows out of a sleeper and calls to the diamond cutter. He telegraphs a backdrop and gets drilled with a power bomb, and another near fall from Barbarian. Nice little exchange between the two of them to end this match. Barbarian misses the flying headbutt and takes another diamond cutter for the 3. 9 minutes and 38 seconds. DDP wins the Battle Bowl. As they push Page up the WCW ladder. Even with the win here, he would never get the title shot because of the Battle Bowl, which renders this entire event pointless. So allegedly, according to the notes and according to everything I'm reading, he never gets a title shot. I guess we'll see. But at least he has in his resume at this point, he is the Lord of the Ring. And he has at least that to put on his resume. And it does result in him potentially being a main eventer, whether it was because of this or despite of this. They chose the right guy to win here.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, who else? Who better?
Yeah. I mean, Barbarian, I guess, could have won, and I'm not sure about how he was presented here in WCW at the time. But to me, he's looking like he's a tag wrestler exclusively. And again, this is filled with all tag guys, so it's hard to even, what are we even talking about? But
that's the weird thing. And I mean, in retrospect, DDP was the standout. I mean, you got to look at that. I mean, Rock, Johnny Grudge aren't going to win. I'm fucking if Ice Train, Dick Slater, or Robert E would have gotten any further than they did, I'm sure the crowd would not be happy about it. So fuck that.
So does this remind you of Kyle O'Reilly winning the Battle Royal? Or
exactly.
So Tony Khan, the more we look at this, it's like I feel like Tony Khan's watching. Tony, if you're watching, we love you. We love you so much. Thank you so much for everything.
Bring it in for a hug, man.
Yeah, exactly.
We
hug
love
me,
you,
Tony. So our main event here, you have the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, the Giant versus Sting. This match was a lot of fun, as expected. 2 great workers. Giant in his prime, very young guy, very athletic. Sting, man, what else can you say about Sting? Sting's still going out there and stealing the show in 2022.
Absolutely.
He was at the Anthony Inoki June 1st Peace Festival. He was also at Forbidden Door. Sting is an absolute legend. The more I see Sting in 2022, the more I want him. Has a legend been booked as perfectly as Sting without putting the world title in his vicinity at all? He is helping the young talent. He's making his opponents look good. And he's also getting his shine. He's not just putting guys over like, Kurt Angle at the end of his Raw run where he's losing to Baron Corbin.
Yeah.
The way Sting is booked is perfect. And kudos to Tony. And looking at him here, it feels like this is a different person, but it's the same goddamn guy. And it's so much fun to watch.
No, that's like Sting really, like his redemption story in AEW is beautiful. Like I couldn't be happier for any legend wrestler that came to WWE and got that royal screw over treatment. Really did. And then everybody hears he's getting signed with AEW, and they're like, what is he gonna do there? He can't wrestle anymore. Blah blah. This guy's jumping off fucking shit like New Jack. He's playing such an important role for Darby Allin, and not just Darby Allin. I mean, we got that match with Punk and Sting, and it's so cool to see him being able to team up with people that he hasn't. This is how a WWE run should have been.
Yeah,
and it's listen. I'm glad it went the way it did, because we wouldn't be getting New Jack Sting that we got right now, fucking jumping off balconies, doing all of this crazy spots. But it's really as somebody who's been watching him since, I mean, God, I've been like 3 years old, you know, like really watch, like I want to paint my face. Like it's so fulfilling to see him, the longevity of his career, and seeing him have this awesome run right now, and just watching him back here with Shot of Nostalgia. Like it's so fucking fulfilling, man.
There's two schools of thoughts as far as how you book these legends, and I think a lot of people get stuck on the way WWE books their legends, and Undertaker, or guys like Shawn Michaels who come back, or how they presented Ric Flair at the end of his run before, like when he retired. There's a way you can present a guy in a mid card to still make him feel like the main event, and I think AEW finds that perfect balance, because where TNA went wrong, where WCW eventually went wrong, is when you put the titles on these guys that they're not in their prime anymore. You're exposing them to a point where, like, if Sting was ever put in the main event, that's not what AEW fans want to see.
Yeah.
And I think it goes against everything they stand for, but people still want Sting to look strong because he's a big part of our childhood and our adulthood. He is a big part of wrestling at whole. And you want to make sure he has that reverence. And like, they created this legendary Hall of Fame figure in the AEW universe that at any time he can main event. He can also be a part just at ringside.
Yeah.
He's not even a part-timer at any point. He's there every week, man. Like, it's so much fun. But we talk about that on the AEW wrap-up show. But this match, man, there were some shenanigans in here, but Sting really excels working with super heavyweights. And that's what I noted from here. He does a really good job of playing the smaller guy. And Sting's not a small guy by any means, but when he's the face in peril, trying to escape. And keep in mind, the Giant is being booked like an absolute monster on this buildup. No one's getting any offense. So the fact that Sting was getting offense on the Giant makes it makes Sting look really strong here. Every one of his big man matches, I look at his matches with Vader as well. They're believable. They're exciting. You feel like despite Sting being the smaller guy, he could win. And at this point, I knew Giant's run was continuing all the way through the fall and the summer and all that. The Giant had a good match with him as well. It takes two to tango. This was a great main event, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say it saved the show at large, but it was a very, very good end to the show that made me feel good about, like, all right, this was worth watching, and feels like they're building towards something.
100%. And like, that's like, I mean, I can't echo your statements enough. Sting really does great with bigger talent. And it's, I mean, the Giant's still super green, super young. So this is probably a fantastic learning experience for him, being in the ring with Sting and just going back and forth. And, Sting's one of those guys that will teach you everything you need to know if you're in a match with him. So this was fun. It was so good. Yeah, man, you're looking at two giants, two legends that are in the ring together, just fucking doing their thing. And I mean, what more can you ask for? And especially what a refreshing thing to watch after this clusterfuck of a pay-per-view to begin with. So I mean, this was really good, man.
Yeah, so they're both in the AEW locker room right now. I wonder if you're watching, guys, maybe get together on the anniversary of the show next year and just talk about this match, or have them do a watch along somewhere on the AEW channel. It'd be kind of cool.
That'd be really cool.
All right, so next here we have the next episode of Nitro, which is the follow-up night. I'm moving the banner here. We got through that pretty quickly, actually. I think because the matches were like 2 minutes long and stuff. But
surprising for 16 matches.
Yeah. So we have the WCW Monday Nitro, which is the follow-up of the Lethal Lottery Slamboree pay-per-view from Monroe, Louisiana, just down the street from where they were in Baton Rouge. This is at the Civic Center. Our champions are as followed. No titles change hands. So everyone is continuing their run. Giant's still world champion. Conan's still U.S. champion. Sting and Luger are still tag champs. The world television champion is still Lex Luger. And our cruiserweight champion is Dean Malenko, fresh off his win against Brett Armstrong. So we have Eric Bischoff and Bobby Heenan. No Mongo tonight. He's busy training with Kevin Green for the Great American Bash. So no Mongo on here. I had the picture of such a great... I played this last week, and it was like such a good picture. And I can't show it this week because he's not involved. But this is my favorite picture that I'm showing. It's just so good.
Mongo's a character, man. He had a really awkward wrestling career, but he was always a good, solid character. I will give it that 1,000%.
Yeah, the dudes on the Extra Cooler show were giving him some heat a little bit, or was it on the flagship? I know that he's been coming up a little bit because he was at Great American Bash. Well, no, it was at Bash of the Beach '97.
Yeah,
and I think he also came up on the flagship, whether it be this week or last week. I consume a lot of wrestling podcasts, guys, but people were saying that it was Extra Cooler. They were talking about how he was the worst Horseman member and how it bastardized the whole Horseman gimmick, and that they felt like it was, not great. And they were saying like, well, you can't talk about that because he has health issues now or something. But when you're immersing yourself in a timeline, like, you have to separate yourself and what's going on today. And yeah, you could apply the knowledge, but Steve Mongo McMichael, like, to me, like, he's entertaining. I'm having a good time watching him as the announcer, and I can't speak to his whole run at large and how I would feel. Like, I don't know if I would feel the same way if I watched this live and like, oh, he's a Four Horseman. I'm not a fan of it. But at the same time, this is, he's very entertaining, showing up with the dog and all that stuff. I'm a big fan of it.
No, listen, he's got a place. Everybody's got a place everywhere. I got nothing but respect for Mongo. Was he might be the worst Four Horsemen member. I got nothing against that, but there's a match specifically. I'll send you a link for it or whatever, but Mongo versus Goldberg. And it is one of the scariest fucking 5 minutes of pro wrestling I've ever watched, man. Because there's table spot. Everybody looks like they're gonna die. Goldberg was super green. Mongo can't wrestle fucking his way out of a goddamn sock. It's really entertaining shit to watch. So definitely if anybody out here listening, go check it out. It's a fun watch. But I'm telling you, this is some of the scariest fucking thing you can watch because you're like, wow, and like, yeah, it's bad. It's good bad.
What I've noticed about Steve Mongo McMichael is that the people that love him, like, love his work, love everything about him, and they're huge super fans. And the people that don't like him are really passionate about that as well. And everything of that aside, we wish him well. Hope he gets better. I know he's having some health issues and all that, so I hope he's doing well today and get on the upward swing. But we'll see more of him down the line. He's just training. He'll be in the main event at Great American Bash. Don't worry. He's not going away, guys. We will definitely talk more about Mongo McMichael. But our first match here, before we get to the first match, this is the first episode of Nitro to run longer than an hour, and the show ran for 90 minutes. So they tested the waters of the 2-hour ordeal, as we mentioned in the newsletter. This one went 90 minutes. So a little bit longer if you're watching on Peacock. It's a little bit of a longer watch. It didn't feel much longer for me, especially coming off that pay-per-view. It just was a quick watch for me.
Good quick watch.
We have our opening match, and it's so nice to see tag teams that are supposed to be together, tagging together. No more lethal lottery bullshit. We have the Steiners, both Rick and Scott, taking on Fire and Ice, Scott Norton and Ice Train. But guess what, Mike Belcaster? It ends in a no contest via double countout, which means we have to take our third shot of nostalgia here. Given the 4th of July weekend started very, very appropriately. So let's do the shot first. I'll go over the match after. Cheers to no more lethal lottery.
No more lethal lottery, man.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, brother. All right. So it looks like they're finally giving these teams a program heading into Great American Bash. So Scott and Ice Train trade hip tosses and clotheslines to start. This match goes 5 minutes and 27 seconds. Very, very cohesive tag match. Good opener. Again, perfect Nitro opener. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the double count out, but it felt like it was okay because they're building towards something bigger with them. And my biggest thing with these false finishes, or I should say the countouts, DQs, all the stuff that causes to take shots of nostalgia, I'm okay with it if it's building towards something bigger, not just something that is done for the sake of storytelling, because we, as fans of wrestling, have seen a lot from WWE that the safe out to not have someone pin, have someone take the loss. It's the safe way out. And I think a lot of people look at these countouts and not through those perspectives, but you have to think of one thing. Back in WCW, they weren't thinking of that way. They had no problem beating any of these teams. They really didn't. It was a matter of that's the way that Dusty and the booking team wanted to tell the story. It's not the same anymore. When you see it on Raw, it's just they are doing 50-50 booking, or they have the inability to decide who wins, and they're doing it with the lack of story. WCW was trying to build something here.
Yeah. No, it's listen. Nobody likes DQ finish for no reason. Nobody likes any no contest for no reason. Like it puts a damper on everything. So fucking put some goddamn story to it. Make it important. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it.
So we had the ending here, and a crucial point of the match sees Norton delivering a shoulder breaker to Scott. Right after that, he gets up and gives Norton a release German suplex. Rick and Ice Train fight up the entrance ramp, and these guys continue to just beat the crap out of each other. Cool spots. I think Scott Norton hit a flying splash, which was uncharacteristic of him. So very, very cool, a good match. And again, perfect way to set the pace for the rest of the night and get you guys back into like the flow of what Nitro was bringing you. And especially this is a nice little intro to a 90-minute show. It felt like it actually built the pace up and felt like it was going to be a fun show.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Man, next match here on the docket, we have Ric Flair defeating Eddie Guerrero. And this was, again, we talked about Ric Flair and Eddie Guerrero touching during this other match, and Macho Man and Eddie touching in this match. And again, Eddie, to be clear, Eddie's not at the level he is where he would get to. But he still has every bit of the in-ring skill that we remember. Eddie Guerrero was treated like an inconvenience last night at Slamboree by Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. So now he gets a match with Flair since Arn is busy later in the evening with the Giant. This also note, if you watch the Flair High Spot shoot interview, he mentions this match specifically from this Nitro. And Flair says that Booty Man, a.k.a. Brutus Beefcake, told him after the match that he shouldn't have given Eddie so much offense since he was feuding with Hogan. Flair had this story straight considering how much Flair and Eddie wrestled, but allegedly this was the match he was talking about because Eddie does get a decent amount of offense here, which was cool to see. People were chanting Eddie's name. People were getting behind him. He had the talent to be a main eventer right here. WCW, of course, never pulled the trigger, but they also didn't pull the trigger on Chris Jericho. It would take less than 10 years for him to be world champion at Madison Square Garden, standing in the ring with Chris Benoit, holding that WWE championship. And it took moments like this to get him there. Like working with Ric Flair, the rub for him, this was immense, especially where he was on the card at this point.
For sure. And that's the thing. Like Flair could put anybody over, but he chooses who he's going to give the time of day to get them over. I think this was one of the beginning parts of seeing Eddie become that main event character. Like you felt it. And I love those matches when you got a guy like a Ric Flair fighting, an Eddie Guerrero when they're just still blooming and blossoming. And it puts it over like same way when it's this basically how it was when Kurt Angle did the open challenge and Cena came out and they hit this close, And like that's those are those moments that build somebody to the next level. I felt this put Eddie Guerrero to the next level, even though WCW didn't pull the trigger on it.
Yeah, I mean, you alluded to it. This match went 17 minutes and 4 seconds, which is uncharacteristic of any Nitro match. Never mind a match in the middle of the card. This belonged on any pay-per-view. Noted by a lot of people that this should have been a crowning moment for Eddie Guerrero, despite losing. And, the cliche quote that people use, you don't have to go over to get over. This was that case here. He became a star in this match, in my eyes. Yeah. It elevated her to the next level, working with a guy like Ric Flair. But they missed the prime opportunity, just as, and I will compare it to today with Riddle. And what they did with Riddle with the Roman Reigns thing, and I'm not sure if you're following along with the storylines there, but Riddle did lose to Roman Reigns for the title match. And of course, Riddle wasn't winning the title, but not only was he organically over and the fans were going crazy for him with his RK Bro stuff and Orton being out and becoming a sympathetic character, but the ratings were up. Read the tea leaves, man. Like sometimes you got to pivot off the course and make a decision that's good for everybody else. Like you almost had a guy who's full time as the next star, and they blew it the next night on Raw where he got squashed by Omos.
Yeah.
It just straight out of WCW's playbook, like squashing any momentum because it's not what we had intended. It's just absolute bullshit.
Well, it takes away from everything, man. And like, that's the thing. Like that's the problem with WWE right now is they don't know how they don't have the ability to change lanes. They are stuck on a track and they need to get the fuck off the track and just figure out how to turn what their product is into a highway. So they have multiple options. I think that's what worked so well at the Attitude Era. Like you could shit all over titles flipping left and right and stuff like that, but they did it because they were willing to oh, Chris Jericho's great, but this guy Kurt Angle's pretty good too. Let's have him be the champion for a few months, and then we'll switch it back to Jericho, or we'll move it to Austin. We always have that emergency lane with Austin and Rock. Like you had wiggle room, and they don't allow themselves to have wiggle room anymore. So it takes away from the product.
Yeah, I'm convinced, and great analogy with the lane highway, because they're stuck in the lane and they can't get out. Yeah. And their plan is their plan, despite their plan. And we saw it with Daniel Bryan, that it takes an absolute earthquake to shake them and say, we don't want Batista versus Orton. We want Bryan. He's organically over. And it took Punk leaving for that to happen and shake up all their plans. So thank you, Punk, for that. But they have the inability to just go off the course. And I am convinced that if Stone Cold Steve Austin came around in WWE in 2022, they wouldn't know what to do with him. And they would micromanage it, and they would cut him off at the knees, because it's not what they had intended. They didn't want him to become a star because it wasn't their plan. And that's what's missing. Yeah. So sorry for the little rant there, but Riddle, it just reminded me, because he had momentum that was built from that match with Roman. And I think people should have looked at the numbers. Like, they did over 2 million viewers.
Wow.
And maybe be like, oh, we have something with Riddle. Let's do something. And just like WCW realized, despite it being a match, looking at it retrospectively of how Guerrero was put over, they never pulled the trigger, and he never became the guy as a second guy in WCW. So, yeah. Man, like, two parallels, especially, like, it's so funny that WWE prides itself on being, like, we beat WCW in Monday Night Wars. They're becoming Nitro at its worst. Like, they have the inability to make new stars. They're leaning on nostalgia. They're leaning on guys that are part-timers. Like, you become what you hated. Like, it's unbelievable. Fuck, man.
Crazy.
Now I'm depressed. Goddamn. I need another shot. Man. All right. So Gene Okerlund meets with Ric Flair and ladies after the match by Flair's VIP table. There's a rumor going around that Savage is in the building, but Flair tells him to bring it on. As for Kevin Green, he made a huge mistake coming into North Carolina without Flair's permission. North Carolina is Flair country, pal. So more build up to this. They're hot and heavy on this Great American Bash build. Like, no roaming up in the bullpen, building for the angles and getting it ready. So after the break, we find Flair and the ladies have brought some trimmings from their VIP table over to the announce table to share with Bobby Heenan. Heenan and Flair, that we talk about all the time, they're dynamic together. It's flawless. Like, they're so good together.
You can't, absolutely. You can't get better chemistry than that, man.
All right. So our next match here is we have the tag team champions, Sting and Lex Luger, defeating the Faces of Fear. So this is built off of everything that went on at the Lethal Lottery. This match went 7 minutes and 49 seconds. So tag titles on the line. I thought maybe we'd have seen a title change here. Both very established tag teams at this point. Sting and Luger are still that put together team that, in my opinion, you have a built-in tag division. Get it off the two singles guys. Let them do their thing. Sting, obviously, in the world title picture. Luger is TV champion at the same time. Put the tag titles on a tag team. Maybe Faces of Fear wouldn't be the team I would pick, but they're awesome too. This match was really good. And it was a super solid tag formula that was like straight from textbook tag matches. Hot tags, building up some tension, faces in peril, all that good stuff. Great match. I liked it.
Yeah. No, and listen, I would have loved the titles to go on the Faces of Fear here. It would have shook up shit a little bit. I mean, Sting and Luger have been on a run and a half as tag team champions. So
the whole year so far, yeah.
Yeah, this would have been a nice little switch up. But regardless, it was still a very, very entertaining tag match. Really, really fun. I love watching Ming and Barbarian. Cannot say enough about Sting. Luger, he was good, but it's Luger. He does it to the job. He fills it out. I love it, man.
So Savage is here at the arena, but once again, security keeps him from getting in. Savage needs to try a different door, so he's going around. Gene Okerlund says he just got off the phone with the suits at WCW who are having a meeting concerning Savage's future with the company due to his recent insanity. Savage lunges for the door, and it's just not happening. Flair had a good laugh over it back at the announce table. So very Wardlow-esque in the beginning. Maybe we'll see Randy Savage beat some security guards up and follow that model. But yeah, this is, tale as old as time though, like security and, keeping guys out of the ring. Eventually they go crazy and they break through, and you finally get the guy, the face gets to the heel and breaks through. But Savage is, this is a hot feud here. Flair and Savage, they're keeping it going.
Yeah, great character work, man. I'm loving it.
Our next match here, we have DDP defeating Brett Armstrong. This match went 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Short match, but main point here is DDP has the Lord of the ring with him, similar to the Dynamite Diamond ring, carrying with him. A very basic match. So Gene Okerlund gets in the ring after the match, after DDP wins with the Diamond Cutter. And then was trying to figure out why DDP won't be getting a title shot against the Giant. He was trying to explain it to the fans. The truth is that he was tossed out during Battle Ball, and the problem is whether or not both feet touched the floor. Now they're looking back at it saying that both feet did touch. I saw it. They showed the replay a couple times. One foot did touch. Why would you go through the whole thing and not have the guy win the title shot? It just like makes it even stupider to have this whole thing. Like,
yeah,
you went through, we suffered through it. Give DDP a title shot against the Giant at this point.
I mean, what's the worst case scenario? Giant beats him. You know,
Yeah.
well, wow. Like they could have set it up. They could have did it on. They could have been a ratings pool for a Saturday night show. You know, you could have did it anywhere. It didn't have to be on pay-per-view. It didn't have to be anything. You could have did this on a Nitro and it would have been fine. I don't think anybody would have complained. You could have did it on this Nitro and it would have been better than, you know, parts of it.
Yeah. The thing is, it really annoys me is we sat through that whole event and the whole thing was to build towards a title shot because no matter what, the tournament was for a title shot, right?
Yeah.
And we're not getting the title shot. Instead, it's going to be Luger versus the Giant at Great American Bash.
That's
Why?
so WCW. Yeah.
Why not have Luger win the Battle Bowl Battle Royal then?
Yeah,
he was in it.
No, it doesn't make any sense, man. Stupid.
That don't make no damn sense, man.
Don't make no sense, man.
All right, so our main event here, we have the WCW World Heavyweight Champion, the Giant, versus Arn Anderson. So Giant clearly gets the win here. Quick match, 3 minutes and 38 seconds. Kevin Sullivan's explained to be in Arn's corner. Because Sullivan, they're trying to explain. Let me get to the beginning. So they're asking why is Sullivan in the corner for Arn when he's the mastermind behind the Dungeon of Doom containing both Giant and Jimmy Hart. So they're trying to figure out why Kevin Sullivan wouldn't be just teaming with the Giant and Jimmy Hart. They could just be dropping it. But from the announce table, Flair mentions something about a plan. Sullivan explains to Jimmy that he wants to make sure Arn gets a fair shot since he's always been honest with him. That's the explanation. I appreciate that they're trying to at least like sew some things up because we see in wrestling, they think we have peanut ant brains or goldfish brains that we forget about the history. And this was a few months ago. They would have pretended they never even were in a faction together, but at least they acknowledge it. It was a stupid excuse as to why he's in his corner, but at least they did acknowledge it.
Yeah. No, I mean, especially for WCW. I mean, that's huge. So...
Speaking of guys that work really good with big guys, Arn Anderson does a good job of really selling and making the Giant feel immense and just a really big deal. The other word is just a Giant. He makes Giant feel like a big deal, especially coming off. Arn has been in some big matches here throughout the year of 96. He beat Hogan twice. He's been involved in a lot of the main event level feuds. Yeah. So the fact that Giant dominates him and gets the chokeslam for the easy 3, it's a big deal. And they are putting all their eggs in this Giant basket. They want Giant to be the next guy, and I give them some credit. And we talked about this in the past when they put the title on him. It's easy to look at now and be like, oh, yeah, it's Big Show. It's the Giant. Like, it makes sense. But at the time, he's a 20-plus-year-old guy who, as you mentioned before, is green as anything. You know, he doesn't have the miles on his body, like the reps. He's still learning on the job as the world champion, and that's challenging to do. And it's a big deal to be on, national television as a champion at your young age with limited experience. And it's been tried before. I don't think anyone's done it as well as the Giant.
No, listen. Anybody who's greener than goose shit. I mean, you throw them out there, and that way to do it. It's just there's no way to like I don't know, man. Giant he really carried his own during this whole run here, and I think he just kept proving himself more and more and more. I don't know, man. This was probably one of my favorite young championship reigns. It has to be. Like I can't think of anybody else who did it better.
Yeah, I mean, I think of Lesnar, really, like Lesnar, who came in, won the title at a young age, SummerSlam 2002, debuted early 2002, late 2001. So, and Kurt Angle too. Kurt Angle came in at it, didn't have age-wise aside experience in the ring. He won the world title in his first year.
Yeah. But
I think the Giant had a lot to overcome, especially in this era of wrestling where you had to be a big star, a big presence to be the world champion in the mid 90s. Guys like Hogan, guys like Sting, guys with big, I would say, character, you
Yeah.
need to not only be effective in the ring, but you also need to be this larger than life person that it's not just about size for him. It's about, he has to carry himself as this star. And he does a really good job of making himself feel on that level. If you're watching, it's expected. And I know we talked about the legacy of being Andre's son, and they really don't mention it here anymore, but that gives some weight to it. Like, he feels
it sold
like
me
automatically he's supposed to be there.
Yeah, listen, that's what made me buy into him. Like, all credibility, he could have been the worst at such a young age, but you'd be like, oh, he's still Andre's kid, like that was how my child mindset was. I bought into it 100%. Like, he didn't have to do much because he was Andre's kid. Like, he could have walked in there and just threw some people around and fucking choke slam. Boom, done. We're good. All right, cool. I'm over it. I love it.
All right, so Heenan bails on Bischoff too and takes some of the VIP stuff with him while Bischoff hypes next week, which will be the 2-hour edition of Nitro. It's his premiere. And they say it's one you don't want to miss, and it's one we do not want to miss and we'll get into it next week, but we get the debut of the bad guy, Scott Hall, and we get on this run, man. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to the chaser, and we will pick our favorite part of the 2 nights of wrestling we have to dissect. All right, let me get rid of this banner quick. Mike Belcaster, what is your moment or match of the week that you want to talk about? I know it's hard to choose. We have so much. And why was it the Lethal Lottery? And tell me why. I'm joking.
27 matches later. No. Usually I'll pick one from each, but I'm just going to stick with just Nitro because it made more sense this week. Ric Flair and Eddie, man. I mean, how do you not enjoy such a wonderful, beautiful fucking matchup? And it could have been a super, super short match, and it still would have been really good. But this, I mean, they gave him so much time, 17 minutes, man.
Yeah.
Like, how do you don't get that nowadays, even on a Raw, or I mean, this is just as good as Bryan Danielson going an hour with Kenny Omega. I'll watch it all day long, man. Like, it's so good, and it's awesome to see. I'll call him Baby Eddie, but Young Eddie. It's good to see him kind of somebody coming in and pushing him to that spot. And even if WCW didn't acknowledge, we acknowledge it. We acknowledge our Latino heat tribal chief.
And you could see the spots where he feels like he could be on the same level as Flair. And I think this is the first time that WCW fans really got behind Eddie as like, oh my God, he's hanging with Ric Flair. And so much can be said about that. And Kenny Omega is from the same mindset where he'll lose in the G1 tournament. He'll make other guys look strong. Alan Angels, who just, his contract's over at AEW, took Kenny to the limit in his first debut match. And a lot of guys with the egos, and we talked about Brutus Beefcake, who said you shouldn't give him so much offense. It makes you look weak. What made Ric Flair so great is he made his opponents look great. And we talk about that every week. Flair is not about putting himself over. And that's the different mindset. Even a guy like Brett, like as much that we talk about Brett with the ego and always wanted to be presented as the guy, he still wanted his opponents to look good because you're only as good as your opponent that's next to you.
100%, man. And that's Ric Flair says it best in a lot of his interviews, man. He's listen, I just got my ass kicked and looked good doing it.
That is undoubtedly my chaser as well, man. This is my match of the week. There were some other things to talk about. I mean, I did like the Sting Giant match as the main event. Yes. I did also enjoy the Giant versus Arn Anderson spot, but undoubtedly, like, this has been the best match. Technical efforts aside, this is the best match that we've seen on any WCW card throughout the year of 1996. And this match holds up on any card across any promotion. I dare anyone to watch it and say this wouldn't be just as good on GCW, on AEW, on WWE today. They're on their next level. Like, Eddie Guerrero is absolutely. I can't believe WCW didn't pull the trigger on him. I
mean, right here with this would have been the time to strap the fucking rocket to him and just go out there and do what you can do, kid. Make yourself famous. Go out there and fucking work. And he did technically, but I mean, they should have opened up some doors for him here.
Yeah, no, he goes right to the mid card. And I think he goes into the U.S. title and he stays there for quite some time until he leaves. And eventually he has some issues before going over to WWE.
Yeah.
But it takes a bit for Eddie to get his legs under him under the WWE umbrella as well. It takes, and people talk about this with the brand split. No one, maybe there are some other people, but Eddie Guerrero benefited from the brand split more than a lot of people because he was on SmackDown and predominantly they were looking to, I guess, cater to some of the Hispanic speaking audiences, and they couldn't find that star. And they were doing huge numbers in those households with Eddie at the top of the card. And that's when they decided, just, you know what? Put the goddamn title on him, have him beat Lesnar, have him go main event WrestleMania 20 against Kurt Angle and go on that run. And they did some of the best stuff on SmackDown throughout in that era with Eddie as champion. And, you know, history speaks for itself. And that's why, like, you look at a missed opportunity with Riddle, like, you got to read the tea leaves sometimes. Like, sometimes veer from the path and go, you know what? Maybe Riddle's the guy that needs the rub from Roman. Have him beat him on SmackDown.
It would be great, man. Even if they did it in a non-title match at first, have them earn the shot like that. Like, there's so many ways to do it. They just got to fucking learn how to pull those triggers again, man. I think they can't do it.
Yeah. They refuse to do it.
It kills it. Screws the whole fucking product up, man.
Yeah, but you know what? That's for a different time. But, you know, we don't want it to affect here. I just want to say, man, Eddie was phenomenal in this match, and I continue to really enjoy it. And you see the product shifting, and we're going to see more of a shift in the way the product is presented, especially with Hall and Nash showing up and NWO and all that. This Nitro was like top to bottom, a lot of fun. They filled out 90 minutes with some good wrestling, some good storytelling. This felt, I mean, if you compare the first Nitro we reviewed all the way back in January until now, they're two completely different products, and it's only going to get better. I'm really excited to see what the future holds for 1996.
Likewise, man.
All right, so it's time for us to close the tab. As I said, the bar lights are coming on. Everyone's bleary-eyed. We got our buzz going. We took how many shots of nostalgia. We're going to close the tab, and we're going to get our shit in, and then we're going to get our weekend started. 4th of July, baby. All right, as we mentioned, next week's show will be July 8th, and we'll be talking about WCW Nitro, May 27th, 1996, and June 3rd, 1996. It's a big episode. Scott Hall shows up, and history continues from there. So, Mike Belcaster, before we go, give us an update. Where are you going to be next week now that you're back on the Tavern? What's going on in your life?
I'm fucking back, man. Like Kenny Powers. I'm ready, man. So I'll be anywhere and everywhere I'm needed and expected to be as usual. I am back for duty. It's gonna be fun. We got Fig Night. We got the wrap up. We got anything and everything, brother. Macho Mike Belcaster is back stepping in the Slim Jims. Nobody's got, brother. Yeah.
Well, you heard it here, man. Belcaster, it's so great to have you back. And we will be back next week, as I mentioned, July 8th, to talk about all the things going on Nitro. It's so good to have you back, man. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your time in Denver, Nebraska, Illinois, Iowa, wherever the hell you were. But we love you here on the Tavern. That's all we got for you guys. Have a safe and fun 4th of July. Most of all, guys, make sure you tip your bartender. For ACEFIELD, for Mike Belcaster, we'll see you guys next week.